Episode 68. The Embarrassment. Sensing the intense gaze from the three women of the Cox family, Serena remained calm and turned over the page. Sitting next to Serena, Jake saw the menu and slightly frowned. He shot a cold gaze at Lila. Lila's heart raced, but pretended not to notice it, and started to introduce the history of the restaurant. It must be the first time for Serena to come to this place. This restaurant originates from the Austrian royal family. After her introduction, Serena nodded and asked, "Lila, you speak German?" "Of course," answered Mrs. Cox hurriedly, looking triumphant. "Our Lila is famous for her talents for languages. In our family, we are very strict with the education of our children. She not only speaks German, but also speaks Japanese and French. She could easily be an interpreter for any of those languages. Isn't that right, Michael?" Michael looked a bit displeased by the rudeness of his wife. Mrs. Cox seemed to realize that she had misbehaved and stopped talking. Lila immediately said, "Mum, don't mention it." Julia nodded and said, "That's right. I heard Serena grew up in an orphanage, so there's no way that she speaks German. Let me order for her." Then, Julia reached for the menu in Serena's hand. Nola frowned at the act put on by the Cox family. What are they trying to do? Embarrassing her daughter-in-law to shame the Robinson family? Feeling angry, Nola saw Serena smiling at Julia and saying, "I got it." Then, she passed the menu to Jake and said softly, "Darling, do you want to try Himmelunderd?" Darling. The simple word almost blew Jake away. He liked it. Jake moved closer to Serena and put his hand on her hand holding the menu. Serena immediately noticed how everyone's look had changed. She looked up and saw Lila's pretty face with a gentle smile on it. However, deep resentment and jealousy were hidden in her eyes. Serena smiled and pointed to another dish. "I also want to order Thuringa roast bratwurst. What do you think?" "Sure." Hearing his deep voice sounding next to her ear, Serena suddenly realized that she was less than 1 inch away from Jake. She could sense his warm breath on her face, making her tickle. Serena immediately blushed, wanting to stay away from him. However, noticing everyone's case, she stopped. Jake moved closer and whispered, "Your pronunciation is great. Much better than those who like to brag." Serena was dazed. Was he helping her? Serena looked up at the women of the Cox family and found they all looked very annoyed. On the other hand, Nola was feeling much better and urged, "The two of you must hurry up. Don't let the outsiders laugh at you." "That's right. Public display of affection not allowed," said Alex. Jake had a rare smile on his face. Gazing at his older brother, he said, "If your girl agrees to marry you, you can display all the affection in the world." Alex felt suffocated. Only if it was that easy. Michael did not look pleased at all by the show that his wife and daughters had prepared. Based on what Alex knew about him, there would definitely be a fight in the Cox family later. "That looks good." Jake took the menu away from Serena's hand and suddenly thought of something. "Order some warm beverage as well. It would help with your cramps." Serena slightly blushed, nodded, and said shyly, "You order for me." Jake nodded. "Oh my God!" Alex had goosebumps and looked at Nola. "Mom, what do you want?" After everyone had ordered, Julia was disgusted by Serena's happy face. Why did this woman get to have Jake? If it was not for her, Lila would be the one who was married to Jake. Looking at her sister, Julia got a wink from Lila. Julia immediately felt reassured. She knew her sister had other tricks up her sleeve. However, when the dinner was served, the plan Lila and Julia had made was completely useless. They had thought that Serena would not know how to behave at a formal dinner. However, her manners were impeccable. Mrs. Cox saw Nola's look of approval and could no longer hold back. She looked at Julia and asked, "Julia, did you meet Serena near your high school the other day?" Hearing that, Serena immediately had a presentiment. Hearing her mother mentioning that incident, Julia immediately nodded and said, "Yes, she was having a great time with another man." Lila pretended to be mad and exclaimed, "Serena is married. Stop with this nonsense." "It's true," Julia insisted. "She was laughing and having a lot of fun with that guy. I have a photo." "A photo?" Nola frowned. "What photo?" Serena's heart sank and glanced at Jake next to her. Jake gazed at Serena deeply and then said to Nola, "Just a random picture, from a rather confusing angle." Lila did not expect him to explain on Serena's behalf. It was completely out of Jake's character. So, they were so close now that a photo like that did not cause any suspicion. Lila felt jealous, but did not show anything on her face. "Auntie seems to be curious. Just show her the photo, Julia." "Right," Serena suddenly cut in. "Speaking of, how is Julia feeling right now? You should take really good care of yourself the first 3 months after you lost your baby. I have really learned my lesson." Julia immediately stood up and bristled. "What are you talking about?" Michael's face suddenly became gloomy as he asked, "What does that mean? What baby?"